Another thing that a lot of millennials are trying to contract around is debt and future student debt, because they're saying that the average millennial comes out of school these days with about $52,000 in debt, just to, before you get to go, before you roll the dice and start going down to Mediterranean Avenue or the electric company or wherever you're going on the Monopoly board of life. You're 52,000 in the hole. So a lot of millennials are contracting around not wanting to be obligated for student debt if your husband or wife pursues a degree while you're married and incurs student loan debt. So they are adding those to the millennial prenuptial agreements. I mean, that's probably. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I actually, that's something that's very relevant. I had a client here in South Lake, Texas, that what had ended up happening as we were crafting the prenup is the husband had an intention to go to medical school. So wife was already out in a career, and they anticipated that obviously she would be footing the bill for that medical school education. Well, as we all know, it's amazing how many young doctors fresh out of medical school all of a sudden file for divorce when they realize they're going to be making, $400,000 or $500,000 a year, and they can trade up, potentially in wives or vice versa husbands, depending on who's attending. And so she wanted that written into the partition agreement or the prenuptial agreement, stating specifically that if she paid for this, any expense that came from her employment for his education was to be reimbursed in full. And that's a pretty smart provision. I mean, obviously, if they stayed married, it didn't really matter. But if they didn't, she got it all back. And that's a pretty sizable amount when you're talking about most doctors are spending, $150,000, $200,000 to go to medical school nowadays. So.
And then they don't make anything for their first couple of years of their residency, and they're living hand to mouth and working astronomical hours. So, as my first family law mentor used to tell me, there's always an empty hotel room and a willing doctor or nurse, right? So yes, there is a lot of that that goes on in the medical profession. I mean, obviously, the medical profession is one of long hours and long time away from family and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just something to be cognizant of. And if you're a doctor coming out of medical school with $200,000 of medical debt, if you're the ex-spouse of that doctor, you don't necessarily want to be saddled with that debt or even a portion of it. You're going to be upset enough as it is, I can imagine.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't understand too is a lot of people say, well, isn't it true that the law anyway says that if it's your student loan debt and your education, it goes with you? And that's just not the case. You're talking about community debts, even though it's not community education. One person's going to walk away with that degree or certification. The other person is not, but both people could be walking away with debt. So you definitely want to think those things through. And it's smart to kind of pre-plan that at the inception of a relationship.
And you don't necessarily want to, whether you legally could be tied to the debt, depending on whose name's on it and what the debt holder's saying about the debt and whether you signed on the line for it or not. That's one thing. It might be better with these prenuptial agreements to not even have to have that argument. If you don't even have to go down that road, that's sometimes better than ending up winning it at the courthouse.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the Top Texas Lawyers podcast. If you would like a consultation with either Bryan or Sam, please call 1-888-981-7509 or visit us on the web at astxlegal.com. Once again, that's astxlegal.com. Thank you very much.